Hello, everybody. This is Thursday, March 18th, and I'm Judy Bach, and I'm here with Jenny Dahl. We represent Think Geospatial, which is the official website to the Esri map competition for Illinois. We're here to share things with you to help get you started with having your students become involved with the map competition. Jenny, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I'm excited about today's presentation. I'm sure I will learn a lot from you, Judy, because I am interested in the new StoryMaps and how to get started with that. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't mastered that yet.
Well, there's always something new out there, and you just have to keep realizing there's new stuff and just get out there and jump in and try it. So today we know that so many people are fairly new, or students might be really new to using ArcGIS online. And so that's where we wanted to have our focus today. I do want to make the assumption that if you are doing the contest that you have an organizational account with Esri. If you don't, we would encourage you to have that so that you have all of the map tools and analysis tools to use with your students. So in your organizational account, it opens up, and in the menu bar, you would go to map. And this is an ArcGIS map online.
From here, click on New Map, Create New Map, and yes, open the map.
What you're going to notice in the left-hand pane is a set of directions, actually, to help you make your own map. So you can see it's somewhat simple. You want to choose an area of the world. And again, we're encouraging that you do hometown Illinois. Decide what it is you want to show, and think about your base map. And then you add layers onto your map. You can have lines, points, areas, descriptive text, and doing pop-ups. And then you want to save and share your map. And so we're going to be very basic today. We may have another session to show things that are a little bit more complex. So this is really for people who are just getting started and need to have some of the basics or something to share with your students in terms of doing the basics. I always have students start with looking at what you have on your menu bars. And so if you notice on the left-hand side over that pane says details, you have an add button, you have a base map, and analysis. If you are not in an organizational account, if you are using a public account, you would not have analysis there, just to point out one of the differences. And then you notice the details pane is underlined, meaning that's the pane we're in. And there's actually 3 different kinds of details that'll show up in the pane. One is the about pane. And then if you have no map or don't have any information, it just gives you the information about how to make a map. But once you have a map made, it gives a few details about that map. You have a content button that shows the contents that are on your map. And in this case, it's just showing the base map, which is the topographic view. And then there's a legend view. And right now there's no legend because all we have in here is a map. I'm going to skip over the details and go to base map for a second. I think it's important to choose a good base map for the information you want to show. It defaults to the topographic map. And I'm going to use my hometown, Grayslake, Illinois. So I'm just using the search bar on the right-hand side and type in Grayslake, Illinois, and clicking on my return button. And this is still the topographic map. So when I zoom in, you can see I can see streets, the different lakes in the area, the major highways. You get a little bit of the topography. And if I zoom in even more, I get more detail. I can even see individual buildings. So this is something very, very similar based on what the USGS does in terms of mapping by putting in buildings and using very specific colors that indicate different kinds of features. So you can see here that the purple is the Central High School. Over here we have a middle school in purple. Lighter color purple are the grounds of the schools. The green is going to represent parks, and they may not all be named on here, and the gray is identifying buildings. So, it has a very specific look. If I may want to use, for example, the National Geographic base map. And I did not change where I was zoomed into. All I did was change the map I was using. And you can see now the buildings are not shown here. We don't have the footprints of the building. So it depends on what your project is. Maybe you don't need the buildings in your map, and this particular kind of map might be a little better to use. Or again, depending on what you're showing, maybe you might just use a dark grayscale map. And so that your whatever you're showing in there pops out, especially with the different color that you use. So you have different choices of maps to use. I'm going to go back just to the topographic map for some of the stuff that I would like to show you in terms of how to add some layers. So every time you add something to your map, so I'm just going to push on the add button, you are adding a separate layer. And for teachers, especially older teachers, I mean, even if you're a younger teacher, you might remember your teachers using this. It's a transparency. Think about that teachers could layer. Often they just put one transparency on the overhead projector, but you could layer transparencies to show different information about the same base. And so that's pretty much what we're doing here is by adding layers. They are all independent, and the analysis is what helps you maybe pull out different information from the different layers to look at. But for now, we're just really interested in how do you get information onto your map. And you can see that there are 5 different ways. I'm going to go to what I consider the simplest way, and that's by adding a map note. Now, there's several ways you can add map notes. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways. The first one, I'm just going to say that these are sites in Grays Lake. And I always encourage my students to type in a name because that shows up in your content. And if you don't, it says map notes 1, map notes 2, map notes 3, and you have no idea after a while what you're showing. I'm just going to point this out. It says template and it says map notes. And if I click on that, there are different templates. In other words, different symbols that can be used. But again, I just want to keep this very first lesson very simplistic at this point. So I'm just going to leave that in map notes. And I'm going to say to create. Now, notice in the pane, first of all, I have the add button is highlighted. And now I'm in an edit mode, meaning I can add things or change things on my map. So it's something that changes across one of your menus up here. And I have points. I can add text, lines, and areas to this particular map. And again, this is going to depend on what kind of information that you're going to show as part of your study. These are, very basic kinds of symbols. And notice they're identified, sites in Grays Lake, points. Because again, if I change that name, it's going to change the name in my legend. So I usually if I'm going to just put a point in, I like to use the push pin. And again, one thing that we had indicated that you could show some historic information about your town. So if I just use the push pin, I just click, and notice when I get over the map, my arrow shows. And if I want to come, for example, I know here there's a grain and feed store. And if I click there, I'm going to get a pop-up box. And it's going to say point, because remember that was the type of symbol that I used. But I know this is the grain and feed store. So sometimes knowing your locations are important. And you have different options of text. So you can make your text bold. So the grain store, I don't remember off the top of my head how old it is. But it has been a long-standing business along the railroad tracks. Now, image URL. If you had an image coming off of the internet, you can use this. If it's an image that you have, like say, for example, to Google Images, the best you can do at this point is to add a link. So I've typed my sentence. I'm just going to hit return so I can drop down a little box. And I'm going to click on link. And I'm going to have that URL of my image. We're not going to worry about adding an image to this pop-up box at this point. And I'm just going to notice you can delete this, you can change your symbol, or you can close. And all I'm going to do at this point is close this. So if I'm adding some other sites in Grays Lake, for example, I know another site is the old Gelatin Tower in Grays Lake that's in Central Park. And so again, I want to make sure I put a title on this. This is Central Park. And Gelatin Tower, spell gelatin right. So it's a remnant of the business that was there. And I like this because if you make mistakes, it works a little bit more like Microsoft. It lets you know that you've done that and still has a mistake in there. About NAL, there we go. And again, this is a case where students can make things bold, they can italicize, they can change the color if they want, something to make it a little bit more interesting. And I'm going to say close. And let me add just one more. We have it was the old auto store, but today it's called Light the Lamp, which is a microbrewery that was developed in Grays Lake by some men who enjoyed watching hockey. So Light the Lamp is a hockey term. And okay, and this building was originally an auto store. Okay, and I'm going to close that. Now I want to get out of edit, and so I'm just going to go back to my details page. And notice now in contents, I have sites in Grays Lake. They're all, it's checked on, but all three symbols are under the same legend, the same, one symbol. So this is something as well. If I click it off, all three go off. You need to think a little bit about, do you want your symbols to be identified as a group of symbols, or do you want your symbols to be individual? If they're going to be individual, you need to add the map notes one at a time. This is one of the methods. So maybe, let me add something else. How about a look at Center Street? And I'm going to, again, maybe I'll just take a line this time and put the line down Center Street. Oops, click once to start the line. Click if you need to turn it just once. And then right about here it stops being called Center Street. Right. Oh, this is still Center Street. But if you click once, it allows you to kind of move it a little bit. And right about here, it stops being called Center Street. So I double click, it ends. And again, look, it just says line because that's what I used. So the downtown Center Street is about 3 blocks long. the street itself does extend a little bit longer. And I'm just going to say close. And if I wanted to change that symbol, maybe I don't want it to be green, just like the other buttons. Let me come back to that. Let me add one more thing. So if I want to add something else that's going to be on its own, I have to actually get out of edit and then go back to add another map note. And maybe in this case, I'm going to add Jones Island, which really isn't an island in Grays Lake. It's but it's a park and part of our park district. And so I'm going to say create that. And in this case, I'm going to actually use an area symbol. And I'm going to take that first one. And if I click once, I can start outlining the area. And then when I double click, it ends. And again, always give your stuff a title. So now you can see that I have in my contents, because I added these separately, I can click them on and off separately. So Jones Island, I can click on and off by itself. I can click on and off Center Street by itself. But I still have these sites in Grays Lake that I put all in. So if I wanted them each to be individual, I have to make sure that I add them individually. I have to get out of the edit pane and then go back and add the map note. Now, some of you might be wondering, how can I change these symbols? So if I want to change the little light symbol, I can say, I just click on it and I'll hit edit. And now I can change my symbol. I'm given a variety of symbols that I can look at. There's cartographic symbols, national park symbols, utilities, transportation. And again, it depends on, what you're doing. I might go to people places and maybe select one. Nothing here really looks, I'm trying to see if anything looks like a restaurant, not much. You can add your own symbols if you like as well. But again, that's for another day if you would like to learn that. I'm just going to take this symbol and I can change the size if I like. And sometimes I can change some of the fill and the color, depends on what kind of symbol you use. So now I've changed that symbol. And same with the line. I can just go in and change the symbol. Now remember, this is a line. So maybe I want the color to be red. I can change how transparent it is. Obviously, we don't want it transparent. I can change the line width. And notice at the top, it shows you what you're doing. You can put an arrow on it. You can make it a pattern. But now Center Street certainly stands out a lot easier. And you can see that Light the Lamp is at the end of Center Street. So those are adding map notes. You can see that they are added in my contents. And if I go to my legend, it still says no legend because I haven't done any, I've just added these individual places. Maybe now, rather than a map note, you want to think about how can I add something like census data to this map? And there's really two places you can think about looking. One is search for layers, and the other is browse the Living Atlas layers. So the Living Atlas is produced by Esri. It's annotated, you can see what's going into it, and it's curated. So again, for students, that might be a site you would like them to go to because you know that someone is overseeing the information that's going into it. In search for layers, you not only get the curated things that are in the Living Atlas, but layers that have been added by individual people and have been saved to the database for the maps. And again, those may not be curated. And the other thing that in search for layers, let me just click on that so you can see it. It says my content. So if I may have layers that I save in my own files, my own content, I can go back and search for them easily. But I can also search in my organization, I can search in the Living Atlas, and I can search in ArcGIS Online. And it's this ArcGIS Online that you might find some really good layers, but they may not necessarily be curated layers. So we pretty much always, unless you're looking for layers you saved of your own to add to the map, you probably most likely would like to go to Living Atlas, and you can get it here. Or if I go to add, you can just say browse living layers. And things that might be government files. These are about terrain. And again, notice up here, it says Living Atlas, and you can go to a lot of different places, to look for your layers. So if I just say census data, and I'll put it in 2020. I don't think the data is totally available yet. And here's self-response rates. So maybe, we could look at other data that's here and check it out. We have census blocks. I'm just going to take that first one. And again, if I click on it, this is what you get, the information. This is called metadata. And so people who are working with maps or with remote sensing, sometimes you like to go back to the metadata to find out where did it come from, when was it made, what is it showing, and you can add it to the map from here. And boy, it looks like everything here is going to be just about the same, and it adds it. So I can also say that I want to remove it, but I'm just going to leave it there. I can go close out that information. And you can see now, this is about response rate. And if I zoom out a little bit, you can see that some areas, we had a high response rate in most of the Grays Lake area. There were a couple places that were a little bit lower. And again, if we go back to content, and here's that self-response rate, I'm going to click on these three dots. I can go to transparency. And if I want to make this really transparent, oh, it's not going to let me. Just trying to see if it's taking time. Usually you can get the lower layer, which is our base map, to show through, because what we're seeing here basically are some park areas, that you're not going to have as high of a response rate to it. Now, maybe I don't think that that's a really good, I noticed it added all kinds of layers here, and I was just really looking for one. So maybe I just want to remove this layer because it wasn't really what I wanted. And I'm just going to say yes, remove. And unfortunately, it's going to make me remove all these layers rather than just taking them off on its own. These are, oh, now you can start to see this where it's because I made it transparent. I guess it had too many layers there. And let's remove that one. Another way, and Jenny's probably sitting there thinking, well, why is she removing all of these? Basically, because I don't want them. Because if I don't want them, all I have to do is click it off and it's not going to show on my map. But it stays in my contents. So sometimes I like to clean up my contents a little bit. So let's go back to Living Atlas, and I'm just going to say census. Now it's interesting because I had a whole different set of data when I did this earlier this afternoon. How about we put US Census? Because what you might not have noticed, that the Canadian census also showed up. So here's census blocks, here's the census populated area. And so I can just click on this and add it from here, or I could look at all the information if I like. And I'm just going to add it, and it added it automatically. So now these are all layers on my map. I can click them on and off, and I have this one layer that I put the transparency on. Let's take that off, and maybe I don't know why these are all showing. They're not showing. This is the one. Okay, I'm being a little bit transparent right now, which I wasn't expecting that to look that way. But you can add census data by going to that living atlas, and you can see in the content that it is a separate layer. Now, if I go to the legend, notice that I have information from the Census Bureau about classes of population. In other words, the amount of population. So if I zoom out a little bit, you can see that there's differences in some of the colors as we look around Grays Lake. I'm going to add one more thing before I share with you a little bit from StoryMaps. If you start a file, and again, this is probably a discussion for another day and how to set this up, but if I've created a file of information in an Excel spreadsheet, and you can have students do this and add all their data into an Excel spreadsheet, and you save it as a layer, a CSV layer, a comma separated layer, and I'll show that to you in a second. Okay, just give me Grays Lake here. Okay, so I have some that are doctor's offices, and I've done some layers about restaurants. But let's just take the doctor's offices. Oh, let's maybe the restaurants with pictures. Okay, notice it says it's a CSV file. If I went in to open this, oops, it's going to put that there. Let me show you. And my restaurants with pictures. It opens up in an Excel spreadsheet, and there's columns in this Excel spreadsheet. One thing that you must have if you decide that you want to add all kinds of information is that you must have an address. It either needs to be latitude or longitude, or it needs to be an actual street address, not a PO box, to be able to add this to the map. So I have a separate column for city, a separate column for state. And so initially when I saved this, I saved it, oops, as an Excel file. I usually save it both ways. But then in order to bring it into ArcGIS Online, you save it as a comma separated value. And you just find that down here. So you say save as, and you change your file format. So here's the regular Excel notebook. And sometimes people say, well, how do you know which one? You just really, I think you can also take this top one. It's showing up down here. And it says I already have that, so I'm just going to say yes. Okay. So I wanted to show you that this really is like an Excel spreadsheet, or it is. That's how you can set it up. Let's go back to our map. And so I found that file. I'm going to import that layer. I think I'm going to import that layer. Let's try that one more time. Add a layer from a file. So this is a file that I have. Sorry, I have to search for it. This is the one I want. I'm going to say to open this. It shows it in this box. I'm going to say import that layer. Now it's going to open up. And again, I used addresses. You can use latitude and longitude. And you can add it as a table if you'd like. And again, we're not going to go through all this other stuff. I'm just going to say, go ahead and add that layer. And let me just click off a few things here so you can, let's take off of the census data. And here's the layer that I just added. And if I click on my dots, okay. I think there's just something funky going on with the computer.
Yeah, because if you click on the dots, you should see the pop-up, shouldn't you?
Yes. So I'm not sure. There's something a little funky here going on. Let me show you a little bit. As you may have noticed that as you hover under any of your layers, there's different symbols. And again, this is something to get into more detail after you know, as you're adding things. But this is the detail about showing these different locations on here. And it says location only. And so it just showed it all as a single symbol. That's why they're all just these little, you know, orange dots. But maybe I want to show, here's all those columns that I had. And maybe I want to look at types of food. And now my options have changed. I can keep them all just as a single symbol, or I can do this unique symbol so that American food is going to be in red, Mexican food is going to be in blue, Chinese in orange. And I don't know if you noticed, it automatically it's called on the fly. As soon as I selected that, it put those on the map. It changed it automatically. So I'm going to say done. Let's see now if anything opens. Somehow, yeah. Well, another little glitch today, because all those should open up and show you everything, and they would actually have a picture in it because I had photographs added to all of that. Anyway, the next step would be, and sometimes I even have students do this first, is to save your map. And I save as, and I'm going to say Grays Lake, Illinois. You must give it tags. This is like like information that, you know, that would take you to this. So obviously Grays Lake would take me there, and I'm just going to hit my enter button. And maybe I want to put Illinois. So if someone was searching on Illinois, they would see files on Grays Lake as well. And again, depending on how sophisticated you are and how much you've been doing, I've set up files in my content. And I thought I maybe had an Esri file in here, but I guess I don't. I'll just put it under my big file, and I'm going to save my map there. And you can see that it's changed my name here. And then I can share it if I like. I can share it with everybody. And here's the link then that allows me to share it with everybody. I can create a web map out of it. I can embed this into a website. So the sharing gives you several different things that you can do with this map. Okay, let me show you how to a different kind of map. Jen, do we have time, Jenny, to do how to do it in StoryMaps? Or do you think
Well,
that?
yeah, I think we have time. It's 4:40 right now, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm on my map. Remember, I'm in my organizational account. So if I click on this button on the left that says home, it's going to take me to different places. And in this case, I want to go to my content. And first of all, I want to show you. So remember I said I had lots of different folders. So if I click on my JBOC folder, here's the map I just added. Grays Lake, Illinois. It's a web map. Okay, and here's the date that we did it. So you can find your information in here, but I can also use these 3 dots in my organizational account to go to my StoryMaps. And I have several different StoryMaps. One of the things that we had developed for this course a while ago, our online things, were a Think Geospatial website that we were using to help demonstrate how to set up a story map. So I'm just going to bounce down to types of geographic stories, which was the last thing we added. I'm going to have to make sure I hit edit story, because right now it was sort of in final form. And I think here we had some map ideas. And last time we talked about how to add a swipe map and how to add a slideshow. But let's think about now adding a map. And it's under media. So you hit the plus sign under media, and it has a map. Now it's going to do a couple, it's going to go back and say, okay, what map do you want? Here's maps you've made in ArcGIS Online. Here's my Grays Lake, Illinois map that I've made. So I can click on that. And here's, you can see, here's the map that we did. Here's the layers that this is, we have the Grays Lake restaurants clicked on, but we had clicked off. So there's a little bit different feel, a little bit different formatting to doing this one. I can decide if I wanted to edit this. I could go back to ArcGIS Online to edit. I have some options where I can add the search feature. So let's turn that on. I can make sure the legend shows. I could add a bookmark if I want, or I can look back at my maps. The base map stays the same because this was the base map that I built in ArcGIS Online. And so now I can say, okay, let's add this map to our story map. And here it is. I've added it to the story map. I can click on, although these weren't opening in ArcGIS Online, so they're not going to open here. And I can make the size of my map different sizes. I can go back and edit it. These are, just, again, if you hover over it, it opens up and allows you to do a few different things. Something that doesn't show up very clearly, but in the lower left-hand corner, I can get a legend for my map. So I can add it from a map to my story maps directly from ArcGIS Online. Or, let's try the other way. Here's a map. Rather than one I've created, maybe I want to add a new express map. These are express meaning you can add them quickly in ArcGIS Online. And so here's our, your setup where you kind of start working on it. Here's the layers. We haven't drawn anything yet on it. And here's some map configurations. So I always like to turn on my search button and usually the legend. And notice here, I can change my topographic map, and I have various different things I can change it into. I'm going to leave it on topographic though. Okay, on top of the map, similar to what you see in ArcGIS Online, you can add different points. So I'm first going to go in and search for Grays Lake. There it is, popping up. So it zooms in to that point. And so you can see we have that topographic map there. And you know what? I'm just going to click that off. I don't want that tag there, but I am going to put up here, they call them, so in ArcGIS Online, they call them map notes. Here I call them tags. All right, and again, it's going to be a point. And let me go in and add, I probably should have zoomed in a little bit more here. But here is where light the lamp is. And if I click on that tag, oops, I'm sorry. If I go back to my layers, here's my tag. And if I click on it, it's going to say, okay, what do you want to add into that tag? So the name is Light the Lamp Brewery. I can add my description that the brewery is housed in an old auto store. I can, again, tags, this, you don't have, you can change the color. You can add your own tag, but you don't have the choices like you do in ArcGIS Online, where you had a whole series of map symbols. You can change the size a little bit, but that's really about all you can do in terms of your tags. You can see it's a lot more limited. But the thing I like about this is I can add my image. And so I can go back to, let's make sure I'm in the right spot, my desktop. Wrong one. Here's my, oops. Here it is. Grays Lake photos. Here's my light the lamp photo that I took and have just on my computer as a JPEG. And I can say open that, and we'll open my image. So when I'm done adding this tag, I can say, okay, maybe I want to add another tag. So let's, I'll do one more. I'm going to add a point, and let's add Jones Island. So I'm going to go over here, and let's give it a name. This is where the Park District headquarters are. And maybe I want to make that tag more of a blue. I'm going to enlarge it to be the same size. And again, I want to add an image. And here's Jones Island. And I'm going to be done with that. So now, you do all your stuff in the left-hand pane or using features to add lines, areas, text. I'm going to click done on the lower right side. And in pops my map, my new map, my express map. And when I click on these, my image is automatically added, as well as my text. So adding images is different, and that's why I wanted to show you the story maps, because adding images to your pop-ups is a little bit different than when you work in ArcGIS Online, where you need to use a URL. And we didn't go, we tried adding it from the Excel or the CSV file, but that one wasn't having some issues there. So what you might have noticed when I clicked on the pop-up, okay, now it's going to be finicky too. Okay, sometimes it increases the map size, and so in order to get out of that, you just go in the upper right-hand corner until I put it back in the size I had it on my map. So those are several ways now. We looked at ArcGIS Online in terms of adding different kinds of layers into an ArcGIS map. You can add a map note. So go back here. Open that in my map viewer. And in content, you can see all the different layers that we've added. We've added map notes, like for Jones Island, we added it, there it is, it showed up very tiny. It added it as an area symbol. We can add multiple places under one map note, or we could add individual points, signs, and areas, as we did with Jones Island and Center Street. Then we can add layers. So you can search for layers in the Living Atlas, especially if you're looking for census data or terrain or maybe even species. Anything from that you think is going to be from a government site, you certainly can add in. And there's a lot of local sites. There's a lot of sites in Illinois that we can direct you to add these different layers. And then you can add a layer from a file if you create your own information that you're collecting. And you can add that file directly to a map. I will say, and again, some of you might be waiting for us to do survey 1, 2, 3, where you go out into the field and collect data using your iPhone or an iPad or an Android, something that's similar to that. It will plot it automatically onto a map as well. So there's another way of getting points onto a map. The other thing we talked about was if you go into the story maps, you can add you can add either a map that you've created in ArcGIS Online, or you can add an express map, again, with data that you've collected. One thing is you do an express map, you can't do analysis I'm going to say at this time. I always think that there's always more coming with Esri to make changes. So if you're doing something that's analysis, you do have to do it in ArcGIS Online. And we haven't talked about how to do that yet. That'll be in another session.
Well, I will have this posted on our website, probably within the week. So for those of you who missed it this time, you can always go onto our website and see the archives of videos.
And again, some of you this may have been very simple for you, it's too simplistic, you're beyond that, you want to have more detail about adding information to maps, Jenny and I, you can contact either one of us to find out how to do that. And as we go along, we might be able to also do some sessions on that. But we're just trying to get everybody started in some way that may be something you can show your students and let them see how to add things to their maps, and they'll go out and they'll find all kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
So, so I guess, yeah, at this point, we plan to meet again next Thursday,
Mhm.
March,
Still March.
yes, March 25th. And we'll bring you another technique. Maybe then we'll look at some analysis, how you can do analysis in ArcGIS online.
Very good.
Okay, so let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay, I'm going to stop our recording.